Hi, this is Carl from Genesis. First of all, I'm pleased to announce that earlier today I released my 100th YouTube video contribution here onto the site, Thursday the 17th of June 2010. I first started recording YouTube videos on New Year's Eve 2008. That was my initial recording. Over the first few months there weren't that many follow-ons, but I'm pleased to say that as time has gone on, I've tended to record YouTube videos on a more regular basis than I did when I first started out. And I'd also like to thank the subscribers to my YouTube videos, to the people who have interacted with me both on the site and by sending me direct email messages from the Genesis website, and also to the YouTube polyglots and also to fellow language learners out there on YouTube who have shared information with me, shared advice with me, asked me to clarify certain aspects of the language which they might have been studying, and also for the huge amount of influence which all these people have provided with me over the last 18 months or so. Now, what I'm going to talk about here in video 101 is what I was discussing in the two-part video which came prior to this, in videos 99 and 100, and it was a discussion about our stereotypes, our preconceptions of audiobook courses. In other words, these language learning products which consist of a textbook and some accompanying audio material, usually a set of CDs. Now, in the textbook we find a range of different learning exercises, but in addition to that, if we look at audiobook courses, then in the vast majority of instances, if not in all instances, we find a breakdown of different topic areas, usually between 8 and 10 in total. I also mentioned that the sequencing of the topics tends to be more or less similar from one audiobook course to the next. So for example, we usually start off with basic greetings, we then move on to the application of number and letters of the alphabet, to getting to know you questions, and then to wider learning situations where we might tend to be more alone and more isolated, and need to be more independent with using the modern foreign language. So for example, getting around on public transport, making a reservation for a hotel, asking for directions, and so forth. I also mentioned that a similar structure and sequencing of those topics tends to apply to courses which are taught in further education colleges to people who are mainly adults engaged in a course for widening adult participation. Also, I made reference to the fact that the majority, if not all, audio CD courses, audiobook courses, tend to be for the purpose of ab initio learners, for beginners in any modern foreign language, since these are the people who, in the majority of instances, when they first start to learn a modern foreign language, are simply wanting to make use of phrases, of questions, and be able to understand likely responses in a number of different situations in which they are likely to find themselves if they visit a country in which the target language is spoken. Now, in the two-part discussion about the audiobook courses, I did use the BBC Deutsch Plus audiobook course as a point of reference, discussing its advantages and disadvantages, and do feel free to consult that if need be, as I'm sure you'll find a great deal of information in there which will be of benefit to you. As I mentioned, Genesis did create a revamp of that course for the intention of improving it in terms of, to a lesser degree, the vocabulary, but to a greater degree, what it tried to achieve in its revamp was a simplified, a more basic understanding of the language grammar, of the syntax of the language, in other words, how sentences are come together, how we can gain an appreciation of how set phrases translate word for word if we break down the individual components, the isolated word elements of a sentence. We can then relate the meanings of isolated words and link them with other topic areas. So what Linguagenesis was doing in its revamp of the BBC Deutsch Plus course, as it has tried to do with the BBC Talk Spanish course, was to ensure that learners gain an understanding of the sentence structures, of the grammar, and that these explanations were simplified and that they were also interwoven gently and smoothly in a non-complicated fashion, and that they were done so on a secondary plane. So in other words, what we were not trying to do was to shove the grammar in the faces of the people who actually bought the paper-based resources, but just to give them an appreciation that if they were to study the modern foreign language in question at a further level, then an equilibrium between linguistic content and an understanding of how the language operates syntactically in terms of sentence structure, then arguably these are the types of people who are more than likely going to study the modern foreign language in question at a further level. In addition to that, there were far greater opportunities for learners to actually complete a wider range of differentiated learning activities. So we had, for example, gap fills. We created our own exercises for each of the tasks on the audio CD courses. Gap fills, true or false questions, word scrambles, general comprehension questions written in both English and the target language, deliberately made errors whereby learners have to look at something and find a deliberate error, no matter to which aspect of the language that error might apply. It could be a capitalized noun in German, it could be a word order issue, it could be the fact that a word has been mistranslated, and it was also giving the learners an appreciation of the fact that if you have a collective, a group of certain words and phrases that seemingly appear to apply solely to one particular topic area, then we're not really, we're thinking too much along the lines of there's too much vocabulary to remember. There's this vocabulary to remember for this topic-based learning area, and then there's another huge set of vocabulary which can't apply to that learning area and which we need to focus on in order to be able to survive in another situation, in another topic-based learning scenario. It's not always the case. I think what Linguagenesis tried to do was to enable learners to see just how much vocabulary can be applied to a range of learning situations, in order to actually comfort them in the knowledge that if they have a broader range of vocabulary which has a common basis of familiarity which applies to a wide range of situations, then this is going to give them an opportunity to actually face the modern foreign language with a greater deal of calmness and composure, and then they're not going to be as likely to get worked up in the face of learning a modern foreign language thinking there's going to be too much to remember. It's all about simplification, it's all about integrating linguistic components, it's all about showing the relationships and the associations that exist with the language between one topic area and another, and as I say, creating that equilibrium between linguistic content and, on a secondary level, but one which is equally as important as learning vocabulary, is an understanding of how the language actually operates. If you do have any questions, do feel free to send me an email or post a message here on the YouTube site, and I'll be happy to respond. But as I say, I hope you do find the discussion in videos 99 and 100 to be of benefit to you, and I look forward to actually producing more YouTube videos here very soon, as soon as I've received any inspiration or new and innovative ideas as far as any aspect of modern foreign language learning is concerned. Cheers.